How's it going, Jennifer?
It's going pretty good, Jake. How are you doing? Big
Good.
day yesterday.
I thank you. It's birthdays are weird. It's like this thing that you mark the change of everything, and I that you say that because I always joke like the New Year's not really the New Year. I call it Planuary, right? I probably said that like Planuary, like because it's not because I'm a procrastinator, but maybe that I am. But like January to me is that month to get ready and to really launch in February. And I know I said this to you, but worst case scenario, you lose a month of productivity, but you put a good plan together. And I don't know what it is about this birthday, but I'm like, okay, I got to get my stuff together. So I'm just putting this on the record now, all of a sudden on the call, so I can have everyone's accountability, which I now regret instantly. But it's the basics, right? And I'm trying to do some of my own basic stuff, the things that I know are fundamental to me, professionally, personally, and just all of those things. And I think this is why this particular topic is kind of interesting. It's not magic. It's not even sexy. It's the stuff, right, that we talk about all the time. And I mean, you know how important this stuff is, right? We've got a session coming up about the importance of your database and all those things. And I mean, you remember everything, and I know you make great notes.
I wish.
I was gonna say, do you have one of your notebooks in front of you to show us all of how you? Yeah,
I do.
I'll start by saying that I don't care what your system is, and that's not to say that I don't care. I want you to have a system that works, and if it's pen and paper or it's a bunch of note cards or whatever that is, you got to have something. You got to have something for your database. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. So what we're going to talk about today, I maintain a client database sorted by groups that is updated consistently. Notice that there's a comma after database because having it, kind of like a business plan. I have a business plan, but do I work it? Do I use it? Do I think about it? Do I interact with it? That's the next level stuff that I think most of us miss. And we are all guilty of that. I'll reference our leadership big rocks. It's one thing to have it on a list, but it's another thing to review them and find out where you are. And I think that's what we're going to talk about today. I promise you it's not going to be that sexy, but I will promise you at the end of this, if you do some basic things every day, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour every day, time blocking, you're going to have a product in 3 months, which is going to be incredibly important. So why do we do it? CRM, client relation manager, and you see my notes, collection of random minutia. Like, I think that's the magic of a database and keeping track of the things that people say to you just offhand, and you're like, oh, their son's thinking about going to Stanford, like whatever it is, and you make a note of it. The next time you have that conversation, you can be like, hey, how's that going? Now, a lot of people feel very weird about that. And I don't understand why, because when we talk about, from our last session, we talked about the trust formula, right? One of the ways that we can demonstrate trust is you said something to me, time passed, and I remembered it and repeated it back to you. That's everything that every single client wants from their agent. So I'm baffled by our inner monologue that prevents us from keeping track of stuff. Jennifer, do you have any thoughts on that? Like, I don't know, maybe you have some insight on why we are like we are.
I think it's I would say I fall into this category about it. Almost feels like a cold call, calling all the people in my database and just asking them for something or checking in on them. But really, the way you referenced it just then made total sense to me. All you're doing is making contact with them, asking them about something. It builds that trust, like you're talking about, and it solidifies the relationship. This business is all about relationships, and that's what you're doing.
And and I think we all struggle with this, like being present in that conversation. And the problem's not the problem. There's always a thing behind it. So when someone says something, there's questions to ask, and it's really that active listening element that I think we can all work on. Is when they said something, I recalled that little nugget of information that they just sort of like threw out there, and I made a note of it to ask them about it later or ask more questions. And I think that's the stuff that really builds that relationship versus, the doctor's office checklist, blood pressure, like all just give me the list of numbers. Well, that's nobody wants that. Right. But when we get into those conversations where we have that time to extract some good information, you learn a lot about people. People love to talk about themselves, right? We all love to talk about ourselves. So, database. Here's the one thing that I hope we take away from this conversation. Your database is a tangible asset that can be sold. And I've said this for years. It's actually, I'm going to step on a toe, the only important thing in your business. Now, every agent, I'm going to look at you collectively in the eyes and say, like, Jake, I'm the most important thing. Right now, you are. But if we take you out of that conversation, what happens? I'll tell this anecdote because it's one I repeat all the time. And Jennifer, you probably have conversations with some people in your sphere, in your professional place, that I ask agents all the time, like, so what are you going to do when you retire? And do you know what they say, Jennifer? Can you guess what they say?
I don't know. Can I retire?
I don't know. Can I retire? Or the other side of it, I'm not going to retire. I'm just going to work right up until I drop. And I love that feeling, what they're trying to convey. And I usually respond with like, so the clients that you've had for 30 years that you've sold multiple homes to, that have referred you multiple pieces of business that put their absolute trust in you and have relied on you as their go-to source of real estate information, you're just going to be like, sorry, I'm dead. Where do they go? And I think that's how we reframe this conversation. I want every single agent to work as long as they possibly want to work, but we do a disservice to that database, the sphere of the people that are important to us, by not giving a transition plan or an exit strategy or something else to even say like, hey, I'm thinking about retiring in a few years. I'm building a team. Jennifer's going to take over my database. She's going to give you the Jake Durando experience, right? We have an opportunity to make that transition. And without the database, without all the stuff that lives right up here in my head, there's no asset. So I'll get off my soapbox for a second, but that is the important thing about this. It's a thing that you can sell, can transition, can do something with. Jennifer, any thoughts on that? I know I soapbox, but you get
No, this is a perfect segue into this awesome program that Christian and Jay worked to get for our agents. It's next week. There's a 3-part class called the Legacy Exchange series, and it's really for both ends of that. Agents that are thinking about moving on, sunsetting, or transitioning out of the business, and for agents that are looking to add to their database and possibly buy someone's database. So that's, if you need more information on that, let me know. I have plenty of it, but you have to be signed up for it. And there are a limited number of seats. It's not full yet. Yeah, it's not full yet. I think there's 13 people signed up for it now, and we have enough seats for 30. We can extend it if we need to.
Perfect. I'm excited about that class because I think it's going to frame, hopefully even more, another voice. It's going to frame the importance of having a database, what your business can look like, what a succession plan can look like, and all of those things. So thank you for that shout out. So why do we have a CRM? Not just because it's a tangible asset that we can do something with later. These are National Association of Realtor numbers. Year over year, it is consistent. And to me, this then should speak to everyone else who's like, I don't want to sell my business. I don't want to do anything. Well, right now, the NAR tells us that if you use any CRM, including notepads and paper, and you work it and you use it and you update it, just like we said on the first slide, you increase your revenue by 66%. You increase your conversions, moving people along 300% more efficiently. Jennifer, does that sound like something that we could use?
Yes, it sounds to me like, why aren't we doing that?
Yeah.
And here's another little plug too, Jake, talking about you can't just have the database, you have to use the database too, which we're going to
Mhm.
talk about here in a little bit. But, we've been having these Thursday sessions with Moxie Rise,
Yeah.
which shows we're going to be showing you different features in that to use with your database.
Yeah, and what a great way to say it too. You don't have to even be intentional to be like, it's time for me to do a thing with my database. Like Rise is going to do some automated stuff behind the scenes where you're doing those things while you're doing something else. Like that's the whole point of it. And referencing ourselves, it's one thing to have the big rocks, and it's another thing to have a plan to convert those rocks. And I know from experience, just looking at the last couple of months, you've been instrumental in helping us do those things and convert those projects and move forward. So we could all benefit from some of this stuff. So another NAR rule of thumb, to me, this grounds it in, we have the database, we have the asset, we use it, we make money from it. And here's the simple answer. If you just have 10 clients, imagine that you only have 10 clients, so 10 best clients. You communicate with them once a month consistently, you build a relationship with them. Over the course of 1 year, not really magic, you should receive one referral from that. Now, it's not a promise of a transaction, it's the promise of the referral. You still have to earn that business. And that's not a huge business, although I know there are hopefully some agents out there who are like, Jake, actually, one transaction right now would be pretty great. And I understand where that person is. And we've all been there at the start of a new business. And to me, that breaks it down in the simplest form. If I just focus on 10 people and I do the thing every month, I'm going to get a referral. I'm going to get the chance to earn that trust and earn that business and close a deal potentially during 1 year. Now, here's where the magic happens. I have 30 people in my database, and I asked Jennifer before we started, I'm like, did my math work out right? I somehow don't know that I can do very simple math on this, but I wanted to double check. So the typical standard of organizations and thought is you've got about 300 people in your database. Therefore, you do the same thing, you should get 30 referrals, and it's underlined for that reason, 30 referrals over the course of the year. Now, again, referral is not a signed contract to represent a buyer or seller, but industry standards tell us that if you close 2/3 of those, 66%, that's still 20 transactions. And I don't care, lovingly, how many transactions someone wants to do. I do care if they know the number of transactions they want to do or need to do. And so, 20 might seem like a lot. It might not seem like that many, but it maths out. And I say this to you all the time, Jennifer, when I look at numbers, I can think with my head and not with my heart. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know what it looks like. Thoughts on how that sounds to you?
20 transactions sounds like a pretty good business. If I'm not cultivating my database and I'm just waiting for referrals to come to me, I'm missing out on that many transactions possibly. That's crazy.
Yeah. 20 transactions is about the point, and I will sort of put the line in the sand. 20 transactions is a legitimate real estate business. I'm of the mindset that much more than 24 to 30, depending on how you're wired. Jennifer, you're wired. You could probably do 30, 50 transactions a year. Most of us have a finite bandwidth that 20 is a pretty good business that we're doing at any time. And that's, to me, that's a good number to shoot for. Also, I love what you said. I'm not waiting for the business to come to you, right? And the active, I'm seeking the business and asking for the business versus the passive, like, well, I get a bunch of referrals. And I love that when I talk to agents, they say that to me, like, oh, I get a ton of referrals. My question is always this: how many referrals are you not getting, right? That's sort of the number. So rule of thumb, again, it's going to vary by market. There's going to be some fluctuation in there, but I want you to know your numbers. When you have a database, what does that look like? Because that in itself, referencing, now becomes how we talk about the tangible asset. When I work my database, Jennifer, I know you're a new agent and you're thinking about, coming into my business and taking over my database and buying that. When I do this consistently, I generate 30 referrals per year. Of those, I close about 2/3. So I get about 20 transactions from that. Now I've got a tangible asset. a known entity of how I convert that process, which I can then turn into a dollar figure, right? Like that's how the magic connects on all of this. Any thoughts before we move forward?
Nope, you're nailing it.
Thank you. So we talked about, I got a database sorted into groups. If you've got a database and it's just a big pile, like just a big junk drawer that you just put everything into that you don't know what it is, that's okay. But what I want us to do for those of us that just have the big pile is start to categorize them into groups, right? And Buffini uses this system, Tom Ferry. All the major real estate coaching organizations follow the same sort of cadence. Your mileage may vary. I want you to find your own path through this, but generally, we've got an A+ group who have done multiple transactions with you, sent you multiple transactions. They're A+ for a reason. They're raving fans. We talked about that, right? They're the people in your business that are like, if I am at a party and someone talks about real estate, I'm taking them and physically going to make them call Jake Durando because I want them to use you, right? Those are the biggest advocates we have. Those are the people we take care of. And Jennifer, you can talk about that in a second. The A group, they're the people that are like, yes, of course, when somebody comes up, I'm going to refer you, right? Maybe they have referred you business, maybe they haven't, but they're going to, and we've almost confirmed that, right? Our Bs are like, I don't know. I know you. I like you. I don't know that I trust you, and I haven't seen you do business, so I don't know. And the C's are the people that when you call, they're like, who is this again? I don't remember what open house. I go to a lot of open houses, right? And that's okay. The logic is the C's become B's, the B's become A's, the A's become A+, and the A+ just get celebrated all the time. So when we think about that in terms of how we divide up our 300 people, again, your mileage may vary. Here's the general mark. About 5% of your database is going to be A+. You're going to have about 50 people, 20% are going to be your A's. The fat middle of the bell curve are going to be your B's. People that we have a relationship with, but they just don't know if they trust us enough to do the thing. And then you've got your C's, people that need to be cultivated. Jennifer, I know you've got some thoughts on this of how we not just sort them, but how we interact with them and what do we do with them? What do you think?
Absolutely, Jake. I am thinking back to the week that we did the marketing calendar, having a plan for your marketing, and we talked with Marion Coast. She was one of our special guests. Yeah, and she talked about this a lot. She has a very large database, and she does different things for different groups of people in her database. So her A+ people get a different level of service almost, and then her A's get the next level, and then B's get the next level. So she's really cultivating those A+ relationships. She's not forgetting about the B's and the C's, but those are her people that are generating even more business for her. So she treats them a little bit differently than she treats everybody else.
I'll play devil's advocate. Like, well, Jennifer, I don't want to treat all my people differently. Everyone should be treated equally, right?
Sure. Are they all giving you the same amount of business? And like you said, Jake, you want to move them from B's to A's, A's to A+. But it's pretty hard to manage 300 people at the A+ level. I mean, let's be honest, that's really hard to do. And we're not talking about not giving them service. We're just talking about what things we do for them or with them to cultivate that relationship.
That's a great way to say it too. And I think we get caught up in the idea that we have to treat everyone the same. And that's true. I mean, I want us to give who we are, the character, the competence, the consistency, all the magic that you bring to the table. I want them to get that same experience, but the information they need is very different, right? Someone that has just come through an open house sort of cares about who we are, but really they're thinking more properties. They're thinking like, what are the things that I need? So it's actually doing them a disservice to not give them what they actually need, still in the professional manner that we do it, but the information needs to be different for those people. And I think that's what's important. Every time I look at this, I think of just your friend group. I not that I don't have a lot of friends. I do. I promise I do have friends.
Of course you do, Jake.
But it's the same thing. There are, 5% of my friend group who, if they call or there's something going on, I'm like, I'm there. Like they, the broken down side of the road, they're the people that, when you call, they're going to answer, right? And our friend group and our professional group and our database, they kind of feel the same thing. Everyone needs something a little bit differently. And I think the takeaway here again is just that idea of give them the same experience, but make sure we switch the information of what they need to take that into account. And that helps us sort it out a little bit. So everyone gets something different, and that's an okay thing. So we'll say that. So what do? We've got the database, we have people, and the most common question, and I'll just sort of like lock in to anyone who's like, Jake, I have a hard time asking this question. I can't just meet someone at a party and just dump the question on them. I don't want you to do that. Also, if you're the kind of person that does do that, kudos, because the short answer is when we ask for things, we get them. Right? When we ask for things, we get an answer. Sometimes it's no, and that's also okay. There are dozens of little variations on this theme of how we ask the question and what do we say. And, we don't just drop the hammer 30 seconds into a conversation. You read the room, right? We are expert communicators and storytellers. And part of that is picking up on those cues and clues. This is the Jake Durando overtime massaged version of it's a little passive, but it's asking for the information. And here's the dialogue, right? When you have questions, Jennifer, when you have questions about real estate or the market, or do you have an agent you trust for guidance, right? And there's a couple things in there that I've tweaked to my own style. I don't even ask sometimes, Jennifer, when you need information about the real estate market, do you have an agent that you trust to give you guidance? Sometimes I even say, hey, if someone in your family or your friend group needs real estate advice, do you have someone you trust? Right? So I don't even make you on the spot. I sort of do a third party piece where I'm like, I'm asking you about a friend because now Jennifer feels less on the spot. Now, I don't mind asking the slightly direct question. Hey, when you have questions about the real estate market, do you have an agent you trust for guidance? Right? I'm not asking, Jennifer, if you buy or sell, would you use me? I'm okay with that question, but that's a very directed question that does sometimes put someone on the spot, which is not always a bad thing. But if you're not equipped to hear yes, I have an agent that I trust and I like very much, then that might be a tough question for you to ask, right? Thoughts on that question, quick, Jennifer?
No, I think that's great. And I do agree with putting somebody on the spot and having some good language to not put somebody on the spot, because that always feels uncomfortable, even as the person getting the question.
Yeah.
So I really like the way that you framed it with, do you have an agent you trust for guidance, or do you have someone you trust for guidance when you have a question about the real estate market?
Yeah. And the thing is, and I'll sort of lay down the gauntlet, step on some toes. We have to ask. We have to ask this question because it tells us if we need to invest our time in this person. Not that we don't want to invest time in the relationship, but from a real estate transaction part of that equation, that's important to know. And Jennifer, I said this to you the other day. Agents all the time are like, I belong to this group, or I go to this country club, or I have this thing, and everybody's a real estate agent. So how do I differentiate myself? Well, the short answer is you ask, right? Just because there are a lot of agents doesn't mean that they align with that particular agent. And honestly, maybe no one has asked them. We all like to be asked, because the magic of that is, Jennifer, if I ask you and you say, hey, I've got a great agent, it's my sister, then I'm like, oh, okay, well, I didn't want our conversation moving forward to be weird. I don't want you to feel uncomfortable by the dynamic of like, I know Jake's going to ask, he's going to ask. And then all of our interactions become weird because you're waiting for the other shoe to drop and I'm being awkward about it. So this is the one time in life where I actually do try to pull off the Band-Aid and ask the question and just, sort of say it in that, hey, I want to make sure that we remain friends. Do you have an agent you trust? You're going to get one of two things. Yes, And then your response is pretty straightforward. Great. I am glad that you're in good hands. If you ever have questions, I'm happy to talk to you about it. I just want you to know that I don't want to infringe on that relationship that you have with your agent, right? Or they're going to say no. Now, the hard part is not jumping on and be like, okay, good, let's do a transaction, right? And you got to finesse, you got to romance this relationship a little bit. And the answer here is, no, hey, that's I'm disappointed to hear that, but here's what I would love to do. I would love the opportunity to earn your trust, right? And there's the magic there is the opportunity, earn, and trust. It's not even business because if we focus on the transaction, we miss out on the referrals. Like I'd love the opportunity to become that person. I'd love the opportunity to do this. Here's how I work. Time to time, I send information, right? Straight from Brian Buffini. Whatever you say after that, we want to acknowledge that it's a process and it's not just we're going to do transactions moving forward. Now, there is that outlier, right? There's always going to be the outlier. And actually, I think this is not even the outlier. It's the more common response. It's like, well, my person that I know that has a relationship with somebody third removed is an agent, and I kind of am obligated to use them. I know how often that happens because I see this interaction. I'll pause to make this point. There's a huge difference between someone using an agent out of obligation and someone referring an agent that they know, like, and trust, right? And I think that becomes very important. We don't want to reframe the question, but I think with those clients, it is important to acknowledge, like, hey, Jennifer, I know you're going to use your sister because I can't imagine the chaos that would create in your family. And I mean, you already have enough difficult choices to make when you have a real estate agent that you need to use. But hey, Jennifer, is that the same agent you would refer? Right. And Jennifer's going to be like, well, what do you mean? Well, hey, as a family, you got to use family. But would you also refer that agent? And I don't want to make that weird. I'm just asking you, would that be the same person that if someone else came to you and said, hey, Jennifer, I know you know a bunch of agents. Would it be the same person? I'm not saying those people are bad agents, but is that the same? When we reframe that for ourselves, it helps to reframe that to your clients. You're like, oh God, no, they're terrible. My brother's not a great agent at all. I have to use him out of obligation, but I wouldn't refer him to save my life. Perfect. I would love the chance to earn your business over time, right? There's a way to segue out of that and to make it appropriate, respectful, and also shows your character and competence. So you're like, I still want the business. So any thoughts on that weird story that I told about your family and how difficult it must be for you to refer it? I don't even, now that I say that, how do you?
That's a great question.
You put names in a hat, right?
It was a lot easier when my sister, my mom, and dad were all on the same team.
Yes.
Right. But yes, no, I agree with you. And I think that's a totally important question to ask. I think you framed it in a really great way that's non-confrontational and easy to do.
Yeah. The whole point here is you got to find your own dialogue, and sometimes just fumbling over some dialogues makes it easier to get through that process. And it just like anything, it comes with a little bit of practice. So we'll transition here, and I've got the magic bullet up. I love this script. I don't, and you guys have known me long enough to know that I don't know that I ever have a definitive answer on anything. This is one of the few times when I'm like, this is the thing that actually is about as close to perfect as you can get. I'm kind of mad because I didn't write it. And the first time I read it, I was like, there is so much magic happening in this script that it's become my go-to to give to people. So we're going to share that with you guys. And I want you to read the script a couple times. There's one specifically for a brand new agent. There's one for an experienced agent. There's one that an agent changed companies. The core of it doesn't really change that much. It's just a little bit of the introduction, but she does about 5 or 6 things in this script that I'm like, man, that is just, it anchors the question so well. She reframes it a couple of different times. It feels repetitive, but every single time we've done a class where I've had everyone sit down, review the script, and make a couple calls afterwards. Every single time, the response has been positive from the client on the other end. So I put my name behind this script. I wish I would have written it. I don't know that Julie Youngblood even knows how much I seem to love her script. Maybe one of these days I'll reach out to her and tell her how amazing it is. I don't even know if she's in the business anymore. We've included that script. If nothing else, take a look at that and find some of the things you can incorporate into your dialogue. And I think, Jennifer, we're gonna make that part of the broker in office experience to do that, right?
Absolutely. That is part of what we are going to do on Tuesday.
Good. So on that note, you know that I'm a fan of collecting scripts and information. I say the same thing every time. I don't write a whole lot of original stuff. I just remix everybody else's content, and therefore I share the best stuff of all of them. And this is just a sample. So we've got some great ninja scripts, which I love, some question checklists that Jennifer talked about, ways to sort of get to know the deeper stuff behind the database. Of course, the Buffini stuff, which really talks about how to ask that question. Do you have an agent? The Tom Ferry content goes through the same thing, just a slightly different, what I'll call the Tom Ferry spin of that. And of course, the selection of scripts from Julie Youngblood. Scripts and dialogues are the lifeblood of our business. Being a storyteller, telling the right story at the right time to the right people is incredibly important. And I think that's something we can practice all of the time. Jennifer, somehow I managed to turn small content into 30 minutes. I don't think anyone is surprised by that.
No, not at all.
I saw you pulling your ear over there, giving me the wrap up signal. What do we have coming up for the office, and what do we have? Bring us home.
Great question. Okay, so there are lots of resources in the folder. So in your in the shared Google Drive agent training, go to the 2026 MYC action series, and this is our fifth already, Jake. Can you believe it?
Look at
this. I know, this is our fifth lesson or podcast. And there are lots of resources there, and they're great. And so I have pulled for the in-office activity on Tuesday with your broker. I pulled out some of those scripts and some of those things to think about. And we're going to go through them on Tuesday. So have an idea of how you keep your database, and who's in it. Like Jake said, we don't care where you store it. Just make sure you know where you store it and how you interact with it.
Right.
So, and regularly interact with it. And we're really going to kind of bring it full circle on, like we were talking about earlier, on your marketing calendar. How often are you looking at your database? Do you have on your calendar when you're going to reach out to your different categories? And what are you doing to reach out? So that's awesome. What's in store.
That's awesome. It's small stuff, but the small things are the big things. The small things are just the big things. And Jennifer, I appreciate you always. You're such an excellent co-host, and you mostly put up with me talking the whole time. So I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys for showing up and doing this stuff. And every meeting that we have, you reach out to me, you tell me the progress you made. I love that stuff. I love what I get to do. I know, Jennifer, you're starting to love this, and I can tell you're starting to become one of us. So welcome.
I am. Watch out.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody. We will see you in an office very soon. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.